The 2025 elections turned out as far more unpredictable than many pre-election surveys suggested. Does that say something about the reliability of surveys? Or is it also about the dynamism of the electorate? In particular, did the Gen Z and the broader youth bloc play an important role in the victory or unexpected victory of progressive candidates? What are the long-term implications of the 2025 elections, and what is the trajectory of the Marcos Duterte interdynastic rivalry? Not to mention, can the pink movement revive and become a major third force, if not a contender for the top office come 2028 elections? To understand the shifting sands of Philippine politics, we have special guests. Thank you, senor. No, thank you, Prof. Clay, for joining us. Grazie mille. Dami natin pag-usapan. But first of all, I'll put you immediately on the defensive. Many people began to question surveys after noticing that there's some sort of a gap between the final result and what the surveys were generating in terms of expectation. Again, just to be fair, in terms of even framing the question, the counter argument would be a lot of the surveys were conducted way removed from, meaning a week or two, at least from the election day, and that there was so much fluidity. I think even in the past we discussed this, that maybe up to a quarter, if not a third, some would say, of the voters, they didn't decide until the final election day. I'm talking about the Senate race, whereby ang daming undervoting, ang daming fluidity. Of course, you're both a political scientist, but you also are affiliated with a major survey agency. To the degree that you can give us an inside, outside information, what is your read?
Yeah, I think the most reasonable assessment is that for the longest time we have really good polling track record, no. So very close to election outcome yung results ng mga final election surveys. And this time it performed, I would say, less better, no, than in the past electoral cycles, no?
Less better. That's one way to put it.
Or less good, pwede din naman yan, no? So, I think in that sense na, because if you look across different polling organizations, but also us at WR Numero, you'll see that for most of the names nandun, it's the ranking that really changed. And I think yun yung fini-figure out ngayon. But if you look at the results, what happened, it's really the collapse of support for the Senate admin ticket, no? Kaya nag-jumble yung ranking. But if that didn't happen, actually, I think it would have stayed the way that as expected dun sa election survey outcome. But if the question is, can we still trust surveys? Are they still reliable? I think the method is still good, no? It's still a very important source of measurement of public opinion. But the good thing, and I would say, no, as a political scientist, it's a good thing na hindi may mga surprises, may mga changes, right? Because that means na in rare cases you have sometimes, no, kahit sa research natin sinasabi ko na our research is about human subjects. They can change their preferences, they can change their opinions every time, and this time that's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, all around the world. We had elections in Poland recently, whereby wildly different yung first round pa lang of the elections, and eventually, in fact, the underdog earlier in the race came out on top with very small margin nevertheless. So all around the world, we see that sometimes it looks like almost people are revolting against surveys because they even see survey agencies as part of the system or establishment. But obviously, this is a Senate race. Mahirap siya kasi 12 candidates, there's a lot of undervoting, many fluid factors. But in terms of yung standard deviation, even by historical terms, what is your primary read there? Because we can always give a shopping list of reasons. But if you're gonna do a ranking, ordinal approach, ang lalabas ba dyan is dahil, for instance, understudied yung Gen Z vote? Is it because there were like last-minute special ops? Maybe it's because, there was a perfect storm of anti-government sentiment that coalesced, that helped, for instance, because Bam and Kiko really overperformed. I mean, we can talk about overperformance of Marcoleta, but I think Bam and Kiko in top 5 and number 2 for Bam, that was massive overperformance. That to me looks like a perfect storm situation also of like, gusto sila ng government kasi alam nila hindi sila Duterte, pero gusto rin sila ng Duterte kasi alam nila anti-Marcos din kunyari mga kinis or something like that. And then next thing you know, they're on the sample ballot of both sides. Perfect storm, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think if the question is are these are these relevant factors to the outcomes that we've seen, I would say yes, no, in terms of ranking, in terms of priority, diba? I think most important yung political dynamics that the traditional opposition has two candidates, Kiko and Bam. It was so easy for them to be
Identify.
included in the ballot of those who aligned with the Dutertes, so those who aligned with the Marcoses, no, and then because of that they pick up numbers. And makita natin there's evidence to say that that's what really happened, right? Bam was carried in the solid north, but also was able to break through some areas that you would associate with the Dutertes. Halimbawa, Cebu. If you look at the top 12 of Cebu, halos i-mirror nila yung Duterte na ticket, right? But Bam is there at around, I think, number 6, no?
Yeah.
So that says
Wow.
a lot na binuhat din siya ng mga nandun sa area na yon. So
And
that,
Mindanao, he did very well in Mindanao. Yeah.
that too, no? So I think there was really a last-minute ground shift, and that's what we observed here. Again, happily surprised that happened, no? So during the time that the surveys were conducted, maybe that was also the point in time na when you ask voters, the responses that they gave us was also the responses na what you would expect on a midterm elections. Okay, I'll probably just vote for Malacanang candidates, no? Because that's the usual in midterm elections. These are the big names, no? And then maybe one or two new people. But then, good thing that closer to election day and some survey organizations have released, diba, that almost a third of our voters decided on election day itself, no?
Right.
They changed their minds, no? And yun nga. So that wasn't really captured, no? So nagkaroon ng volatility doon sa ranking. So halimbawa, for WR numero, in our likely winning circle, it was only Marcoleta that we weren't able to name as part of the likely winning circle. Pero syempre, iba-iba na yung mga ranking number na to.
Yeah.
But if you will look at it mathematically, sino yung in-overestimate and in-underestimate, no? What it looks like is that all of the Alianza candidates have been overestimated sa survey, no? And then all the other candidates have been underestimated. So that includes Bam and Kiko,
Right.
but also candidates like Marcoleta.
Although
for example.
Bongo was number one through and through, in fairness
Yes.
to him. The one thing consistent that came out is that Bongo would top this race. That it started strong for Tulfo and it went strong for Bongo. And that kind of the race between those two gentlemen kind of reflected also the swing, no?
Yes,
in favor of the
And,
other side, yeah.
And before I forget, the reason also why I think that there's really a last minute na shift on the ground, last minute na changes sa voters' mindset, because to be fair, we've also conducted several local election surveys for this election. And doon halos down to the last numbers, we were accurate. So baka talaga on the national, on the Senate, iba yung naging voting mindset ng mga botante, iba yung naging voting decision. But for the local, and so kaya ako sinasabi that this might not be really necessarily methodological kasi it's the same naman method that we use in the local survey and the national survey. But in the local survey, almost all that we've run closer to the election day, we've been able to mirror the actual election outcome. Governor, congressman, even councilors. So, and usually it's as difficult as getting the results for the Senate as well. No? So I would suspect talagang ground shift.
That's exactly also where I question this media headlines, journalistic headlines na this was a victory for the Duterte side. Parang, wait lang, last time I checked, the Congress is still completely dominated. Martin Romualdez just got, 283 votes. I mean, probably even more decisive than his first, burst into power. Basically, all the major LGUs, yes, some like Baguio, like arguably again, the Mayor Magalong, hi, shout out there. Manila, Isko, Davao Governor, not the... Yeah, but you could say, but I won't be surprised if these mayors, a lot of them will find a way to work with the admin because as LGU leader, you have to have a working relationship.
Yeah.
So, and then dun sa mga nanalo sa Duterte camp, okay, Bongo, Bato, Marcoleta, but like, for instance, Camille Villar, how are you going to classify her really? Like, I just finished a piece for Journal of Democracy. I was asked to give an exact number breakdown. Like, so that's asking too much for Philippines. Because, like, how can you classify a person who, like, twice defected back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Like, ang gulo eh. Like, even
Yeah,
Aimee.
that's
Like,
true.
Aimee, what's funny is that she was endorsed by Sara, but much of the boost to her numbers came still from Solid North. So, still the pre-election structural dynamics
Yes,
kick in. So,
yes.
parang, really, I'm not sure it was a clear victory for the Duterte side. It was an underperformance for the admin. I think the president made that clear. but it was not a clear sweep for the other side. And now you also have a third force, right? Which is, yes, Bam and Kiko are only 2 votes, sure, but if they play their cards well together with Risa in a 24 chamber, the 3 republics out of 24 republics can still make a difference, right?
I would agree actually with you, Richard. No, I don't think that this is a clear victory for the Dutertes. I also don't read it that way. Kasi especially if you look at the local the results of the local elections, no, actually that's where you will see the limits of Duterte's influence and Duterte's popularity. Just look at district representatives who signed the impeachment to, di ba, to supporting the impeachment, right? If there's really a pro-Duterte wave that's kind of like going around the entire country,
They should have been wiped out.
I think they should have been wiped
They
out,
weren't.
diba? Even in places na bumaba, diba, that Sara Duterte was personally campaigning against those district representatives. Wala naman eh.
I think in Bohol, she got 0 success rate.
Yes.
The ones
You
that
know, I think she's zero din against Representative Jinky Luistro sa Batangas,
Yeah.
kay Joel Chua in Manila.
Didn't work.
Both
Yeah.
both
Both won,
re-elected,
yeah.
right? Even in some parts in Mindanao,
Zia,
no,
Congressman Zia.
nanalo pa din.
Yeah.
Those who, so I think the local dynamics really would tell us na this isn't a victory for the Dutertes, no, and mas yung dynamics na yon, no, would show really also the strength of, because aside from the House, that you still have Martin Romualdez as the dominant political force there, if you also look at the breakdown of the governors, most are still with
Yeah, exactly.
Partido Federal and Lakas. So that means the President's Party and Martin's Party. So this is still a big win, no, for the administration. And then sa Senate naman, you've said it yourself, aside from, Camille and Aimee, basta the other perspective then is that the Dutertes, they fielded 10 candidates, right? And they were able to elect 3
Max, yeah.
or 4, 5
Yeah,
if you count
yeah.
Camille and Aimee. So at best, maybe they performed as equal, no, to the admin, but not a complete victory, diba?
Yun nga, like, and going back to this, the reason I mentioned that is because narratives have implications, and there are people invested in certain narratives. So let's go to those 2 key narratives. One is immediately connected to the impeachment issues. Like, okay, now people have spoken, they don't want impeachment. Because if they wanted impeachment, it would have been a clean sweep against Dutertes. Bato would not make it. He would. So that's one. And the other one is very related. Lame duck na si BBM. Tapos ng laban, uwi na tayo. This is it. Let's just wait for the Duterte comeback. Both are absolutely questionable and self-interested narratives, right? And we can clearly see
Very partisan.
exactly worse than partisan, even some would say. Now let's go first before going to the lame duck argument, because that's where the cabinet reshuffle and other key issues come in. Because clearly there's still a problem with the trust rating of the president are not ideal, just to put it mildly. But going to the impeachment issue, let's talk about that. What's interesting is that right after elections, you had a couple of surveys coming out, and I want to juxtapose it with your surveys. One survey came out. Again, these are 2 reputable agencies, Pulse Asia and SWS, so there's no question about their integrity and their methods. World class, no question about it. The Pulse Asia one, look at trust rating. I just found it interesting, and I hope people don't take it wrongly when I'm sarcastic. So I was like it looks like the less work you have, the more trust you get. Like it's like the one that is in detention,
Right.
totally out of the
Right.
question, has the highest, and the one who actually has a job of the 3 has the lowest. Like, okay, I get the idea that if you have a real job, the buck passes with you. But I just don't understand, why do we need to know the trust rating of someone in detention who's like ex-president? Like, kaya nga I sarcastically said, bakit isama niyo na si Kibuloy, ni Teves? I mean, kung effective polarization lang gusto natin i-measure, I can think of many more polarizing
Right.
people, aside from Duterte being the most. And then at the same time, you have this SWS survey, which I think juxtaposes with your survey, or probably complements, which is actually almost 9 out of 10 Filipinos want at least si Sara Duterte harapin niya yung articles of impeachment. It doesn't mean that they find her guilty,
Right.
or they want, hindi sinabi na convicted. Parang harapin mo lang, klaruhin mo yung pangalan mo kung talagang walang basihan yan. So if you look at it, again, dissonance is the least that can come out of it. But it's also very clear that unfortunately in our hyper-polarized environment, each of these surveys, I'm not talking about the survey agencies,
Right.
I'm talking about how interested parties weaponize it for their side, right? So basically, depending on which party you're talking about, they will pick one of these 2 surveys and say, Kaya dapat may impeachment. Kaya dapat walang impeachment. What's going on?
Right. Well, first, so we also did our own survey on this. No, this was the first week of April, and ours aligned really well with what SWS found. I think kanila May first week, no, so or second week ata, no. Is that correct?
Something like that. Yeah, I think right before election.
So that means that because ours says 90%, no, so that's also 9 out of 10 Filipinos saying that they want actually Vice President Sara to face the impeachment trial rather than resigning. That's the option that we gave. Do you think Sara should just resign or should the impeachment trial happen and should she face it?
Okay.
So 10% said resign na lang siya. 90% said harapin niya. So this aligns well with SWS findings, and that means that between the time that we did the survey and they did it, no,
There's a consistency.
and nothing really changed, no, sa public opinion. It looks like the demand from the public is that this trial must go on and Sara must be there to face the charges, no. Again, different question whether they think she's guilty now, but sa amin ang majority is unsure, no, and would like to wait on the evidence, no, so whether acquitted or what, no, but many are still unsure. What's happening here, I think, is that we're learning more and more on really the value of, and I can be really technical here, on how do we then consider na highly polarized yung situations, no? And then, because if it's just tabula rasa na ano lang, di ba, empty space lang, labas ka lang dyan ng mga scientific surveys, then I think, di okay, right?
We can do that in our own political science conferences,
yes. But there's
right?
always context, right? That's why there must be extra care. So, halimbawa, I think for the longest time naman, we have this some methodological concerns about trust, for example, right? It's easier, di ba, parang trust, di ba? Of course, the man with no job sitting there in The Hague, no, lugi lugi iba, because if you ask them, to compare him with the president, the vice president, or any other government official, then
it's apples
people,
and oranges talaga,
diba? Mahirap because people will start thinking about their responsibilities, what they should be delivering, no, etc. No, that's why, for example, kami performance satisfaction, and then we only do it for incumbent officials, right? So I think there's also value of revisiting what kinds of questions we ask the public, no, kasi halimbawa as a populism scholar, then, diba? Charisma, popularity, this is really a weapon that's weaponized by populist leaders, right?
Sure.
Kaya nga you cannot really also just resort to a popularity contest when it comes to these questions, no? So there's that element. I remember, for example, if you ask Filipinos, and this has been a debate as well, whether they trust the media, whether they trust universities, whether which media outfits they trust, no?
Right.
You'll get really results. You'll get results that I think we have to think about whether these are the questions we also want to ask the
Right,
public.
that's a very good point. Obviously, as social scientists, as practitioners, whatever you want to call it, we need surveys because they give a snapshot, they give a way. In fact, there are people, from Akbayan, for instance, Percy, Congressman Percy was saying he was so thankful to the data because it helped them to modify their strategies, and eventually they came as the most successful ever. In the most successful ever. Diba?
Congratulations.
So yeah, exactly. So I think it's unfair when we hear some friends saying, "Oh, wala nang kwentang surveys." That's wrong. At the same time, what I'm worried about. I mean, my mentor in political science was Pepe Miranda.
Okay.
So my colleague in Philippine Daily Inquiries, Mangas, right? So I have huge respect for what they brought back from Chicago, right? When they came back to the Philippines. I think that the surveys are doing a great service to our democracy. Until suddenly I'm beginning to feel the surveys nowadays are like stock market. It's like treating democracy as, okay, anong latest value nito? So it's no longer a question of constitutionalism, accountability, ganun. It's just a question of anong stock market value nito, di ba? Parang meme coins na lang, di ba? And I'm not sure that's really gonna help our democracy if we treat everything as. The reason I'm saying that is very clear. Let's look at the Senate right now. You hear the Senate President saying, wala naman public clamor. When in fact, the issue is constitutional, forthwith. That's nasa saligang batas natin yan. It shouldn't even be a question of public clamor. It is your duty to act upon what is constitutionally bestowed upon you as a senator of the Republic. But no, what you're basically hearing is that wala nang public camera. Or he would say, ang taas naman ng trust rating, kahit nasa detention, huwag na natin galawin yung you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
This for me is not healthy. This for me is not good for democracy. I'll be honest about it. And again, I have nothing against the survey agencies. I use it for my own analysis. But I think there has to be a Goldilocks level of asking the right question, looking at the circumstances, and also making sure hindi ma-weaponize yung resulta mo.
Right. And that's why it's actually very challenging, no? So, 'di ba, sabi ko nga, you've said it yourself, no, na looking for that Goldilocks, no? So, that's why also when we think of, halimbawa, the case of Rodrigo Duterte, we try our best to ask questions that we think would be really relevant, but at the same time would not create that false sense that, halimbawa, the ICC case is not a popularity case.
Absolutely.
And it shouldn't become a popularity case, right? So if you just frame your questions like that, then you're approaching it, I would really think, in all honesty, you're probably framing it in the wrong way, right?
Well, demagogic, some would say. Yeah.
Right? So you have to, and the way that we see it is that it's very deliberative in the sense that we think that when you ask these questions to the public, can you give them context in a way that they would also appropriately respond, right? So, halimbawa, in the International Criminal Court, we take great pains on explaining what the ICC is, what the charges are against the former president before asking them, what do you think, right? And then there's also like a series or like a battery of questions na just checking really or just putting it in the proper context that, this man, according to the ICC prosecutor, is responsible for this X number of deaths, no?
Yeah.
Diba? So what do you think, right? Rather than yun nga, medyo maging stock market na, like mo ba to or
Who's
dislike?
up, who's
No, there's
down,
some,
yeah.
I've seen some papers now na about, yun nga, affective polarization, leader affective polarization, and sometimes it's it all ends in a question na whether you like or dislike someone. But I think that's corrosive to democratic
Constitutional
thinking
democracy,
and constitutional democracy, that we
Constitutional
end up
democracy,
thinking
yeah.
about our leaders as whether you like or dislike someone, diba? Very dangerous also, diba? Yun, and not just when it comes to this kinds of like very topical questions in a very polarized environment, but also questions like, for example, I think we've spent so much energy then debating about how do we ask the question what Filipinos think about the situation in Palestine, because we also don't want to make it a popularity contest and it, na parang we ask the survey question and then mag-end up na gusto nyo ba silang mamatay, mabuhay, or what, right? You don't want that, you don't want to frame it that way as well. So I think
Right.
and this is something that we're really learning now, no, na paano, I would say, na paano ma-enhance ng public opinion research, ng surveys, yung public conversations, rather than just to add to the noise, right?
Right. Or reinforce pre-existing tendencies or give ammunition. I know, obviously, all survey agencies we're talking about are extremely professional. They're doing it with the best interest. At the same time, there is a context out there. And of course, it applies also to me. Like sometimes I say something and then I see it gets twisted. But instead of just complaining that I get twisted, next time I'll be careful not to even frame things in a way that could be twisted in a certain way. That's why you're not going to hear me using Human Development Index for quite some time, right? But having said that,
You went there.
Exactly. But having said that, well, they should thank me because it's the most Googled searched scientific term. But last part of our discussion, BBM, what should he do in the coming months and years? Because these are legacy years. The argument of the other side, wala na yan, lame duck na yan, talo na yan. But then again, we just mentioned, actually hindi. His cousin is still Speaker of the House. Much of the LGs will have to work with him whether they want it or not. He's still the Commander-in-Chief. He just elevated, well, he might be the fox, but he elevated lions like General Torre. Senator Trillanes, if not for the one-year ban on election non-victors, if I can put it that way, I think he would have been part of cabinet already by this point in time. So what is your sense in terms of the way forward for President BBM? Because he has an unusually tough situation, right? And I think that partly explains the result. Because there's a 20 to 40%, let's just say, na Duterte adjacent or sympathetic base. And then you have probably around 20% or so na opposition pink. So he basically has only a plurality to work with unless he forms a tactical alliance with the other side or basically comes out and says, okay, alam ko ayaw nyo sa akin, hindi ako perfecto, ganito, ganyan, pero ako yung presidente na lumalaban para sa West Philippine Sea. Ako yung presidente na at least may ginawa sa issue ng ICC. Baka ayaw nyo yung explanation namin, pero at least may ginawa ako dyan dahil alam ko yung ating bansa ay may obligasyon sa international legal instrument or something like that. Like, there's a way you can find the kind of, kumbaga Goldilocks yung sa kanina. Ito naman, yung parang Venn diagram, some common ground.
Right.
That he could, so that he can expand his base from around 30, 40 to around 50, 60. Kasi mahirap na yung Duterte camp eh. Medyo nagsasolidify na yan eh. What would you be your advice if you were like constructively for the president moving forward?
Maybe the first step is, he should get you.
You really threw it back. I saw when I said use advice. No, the reason I'm saying that is because at the end of the day, even if you voted or not voted for the guy, if the president falls, the country falls apart, right? So, and at the same time, you want to understand, like, is BBM is he doing some Machiavellian plot that is beyond our bandwidth, or is it really all over the place? It's hard to say because the body count is pretty good, right? Like, how many high-profile people? At the same time, parang medyo, he still doesn't project strength and decisiveness and communicative spontaneity for that matter. So, parang the score is not clear to me. And the trust rating is quite low. So,
So, I just draw from, my own research and my own background. And I think that, and, to, like, let's just talk about the impeachment, for example. And I hear my lawyer friends and good lawyer friends saying that, they must put the evidence at the center of the trial and that this is a legal proceeding.
Right.
And I completely agree. But also, I think that as a political scientist, I will insist that this is very much a political proceeding. And by political, I am not saying that senator judges should use their political loyalties as the basis of their judgment. Political in the sense that the public is included in this, diba? The police, the police must be included in this. And I think there's a lot that the administration can do in investing on talking to the public on why this is a very important case, right? I mean, this is public money actually, no? Pera natin tong lahat eh. That's the allegation against the vice president. And you know that populists are really good in creating this sense of crisis, right? And then putting themselves in the center of that crisis. I think that with the presidential toolkit, with the the range of resources available to someone like President Marcos, I think it has to be made clear what is the crisis here, what's the story of crisis here for the Filipino people, and why must we take side of the Marcos administration, right? Is this a crisis of confidence in someone like the vice president, etc. So I think that they must take seriously really this public communication component, Kasi what I notice as well is that syempre, BBM won on the promise of authoritarian nostalgia din kasi, and then he looks up to his father and kind of like it's kind of like inspired of that politics, right? But this is a very different political time na I sense na yung kanyang style ay very old in terms of communication. Kasi parang...
And it comes right after Duterte, right?
Yes.
And right after Duterte is establishing a 10-year algorithm whereby huge number of our kababayan are already in that information space, if I can put it neutrally.
Tsaka ito, para siyang it's permanent campaigning, it's permanent communicating, di ba? The technical term is there is a parang communicative abundance.
Yeah, saturation.
Tuned in.
Yeah.
And if they're not hearing from you, they're hearing from someone else. This is not, the previous time that you just speak from time to time because there's a matter of national urgency. No. Now, you have to compete with this very, communicative abundance space and lahat always tuned in. Again, if their attention is not on you, then it's on someone else. And you have the Duterte speaking every day, kung ano-anong pakulo, 'di ba? May exhibit sa Hague o kung ano pa man, 'di ba?
Influencer talaga.
And that's very it aligns well with the communicative diet, of mga kababayan natin. So I think there's a lot that can be that they can work on that, and I think also lastly that he still has the powers of the president. And the
Sure.
Philippine presidency is a very powerful
If
presidency.
you are willing to use the power of the presidency, to be fair to BBM, I think interesting, he used nostalgic populism to get into power, and then he shifted to a more reformist diba, flavor, which alienated the Dutertes. Now they're his enemies. But the fact that his name is Ferdinand Marcos, right? I think there's always this kind of a shadow of the past na don't come off as a dictatorial authoritarian. So my sense with the president, he's overcorrecting. That because he doesn't want to come off as authority, and I think the international audience also matters to him.
Okay.
And by the way, they love him. Like sometimes too much for my taste. Like the way they talk about him abroad in Western democratic, it's like he's the reformist, he's the defenders of the South China Sea rules-based order. So my point is that I think there's a way to continue that and
Right.
make that even more substantive.
Right.
At the same time, be decisive.
Right.
And you know what I'm saying. So
And ako nga, I will just think about kasi sabi mo, di ba, if I were his advisor, I would just think about the publics that he now represents and can talk to. The Duterte publics, wala na yan eh. Medyo hindi niya na yan matatouch masyado, di ba? So I think there are just two publics that he should care about. One is his supporters, the Marcos loyalists, right? And the Marcos loyalists, di ba, parang they have loyalty and they have affinity to his story, no? So he doesn't need to overcorrect for them, diba? And then the others, ito yung siguro anti-Marcos but cares a lot about democracy, about constitutional democracy in this country, and they see the Dutertes as a far bigger threat to our constitutional order than the Marcoses. So I don't think he has to overcorrect because given the two publics that he has to appeal to, it's very clear na I think he has that base and he has that support to be able to use the powers that he has, no, to ensure na those who need to be accountable in the eyes of the law should be made accountable. I don't think he will have a problem if it comes to that.
and sorry, this last point. Third force, right? Third force or kingmakers. In fact, this is a question I raised in an upcoming journal article. Like the pink don't have the numbers to be a full third force, right? Third force would assume you have 20-30% of the seats in Congress or Senate. That's not the case. But in this very fluid situation, they can punch way above their weight. Two of the progressives will be part of the prosecution team, right? They're people with gravitas, Chel Jokno, Leila De Lima, and then you have Bam, Senator Riza, and Kiko. Like, what should the genuine pink opposition do to make sure they're not sidelined again in this clash of the titans? And more importantly, should they even talk about people power in a sense? Like if the Senate just, cans this impeachment issue. I mean, it's Senator De Lima who's making noise about it, not the president. The president said, I don't want to do anything about this, right? Should they talk about people power? Or is there a risk of further political chaos here if the Senate brazenly just nips this whole impeachment thing in the bud in clear violation of their constitutional duty?
Right.
Or perceived violation of their constitutional duty?
I think for the pink or for the liberal reformist opposition, I think it's very easy because you always just have to be consistent in your political principles, and that will be your kind of like your guide, no?
Right.
So I think if the Senate decides to abandon their constitutional duty, I think it's very clear that regardless if maybe some people would see na people power na naman, but because we know that it's a constitutional duty and they have abandoned it, then they must be protested, diba? That we must speak out against the constitutional abandonment, no? And that also that's also the same thing I think with whether they parang they need to have a tactical alliance with the Marcos administration on this particular issue.
Intersectional alliance.
Oo, kung ano man, diba?
Right.
And the good thing is that because you've said it na there are multiplicity of forces, no? And that means that there's a space for multiplicity of voices, no? So I think that we just have to make sure that our voices are heard, no? I think if we take a small corner and just say
Stick to that, yeah.
we won't be participating in what is actually the interest of many people at dun yung atensyon ng ating mga kababayan, then probably we won't be heard, right? But if we participate, right, some members of the constituency will be in the impeachment prosecution panel, right?
Two of them, yeah.
Two of them, right? So these are leaders as well of that
Sure.
coalition, right? So I think that's the right direction, because you want to be part of these conversations. If there's anything that we've learned in 2022, 2025, is that we just need to be present in the spaces. Once we retreat,
Be
I
at the
don't
table,
be
yeah.
at the table. Once we retreat, I think we lose more support and we lose interest.
At least being at the table, that was one of the good surprises, some would say, of the 2025 elections. At least, not the biggest chips, but at least they have some chips to play, but they have to play it smart.
And the fact that they won, the fact that Akbayan won big,
Ever.
ML
Yeah.
Party List, Mamamayang Liberal also won better than what expected in the surveys.
Right.
That's really proof actually that ang demand ng ating mga kababayan is that you have to participate. You have to represent our voices.
And,
diba?
and you have Chel Jokno and De Lima leading those two groups, so
Yeah.
maybe they represent
Yeah.
also a brand
Yeah.
of
The worst
politics
thing that they
people are
can do is
interested
to
in.
retreat to their own circles, right? I think there's really great demand for starting from BAM down to the last progressive that has been
Right.
elected. The demand is that we're electing you, we're putting you back into these positions because we want you to be part of this political processes.
On that note, thank you very much, Cleve,
Thank
for
you,
that
Richard.
fantastic conversation. Catch us again next week here on One News. You can also check out the long conversation on Spotify and YouTube. I'm Richard Haydaria, and that was The View from Manila. We're One News, all sides, all the time.